know what is the differences? What is the third world versus the first world? You don't hear about second world. Yeah, sort of poverty, how much we have. In the UK, in America, what are we?
We're the third.
No,
First,
we're the first world. Okay. As a matter of fact, if you look here, so all these sort of that color would be first world. Now this is sort of guesses. There's all different kind of variations, and some of it is sort of unclear. But certainly, if you look at the third world, okay, all the areas in green, on the whole. So two countries we want to think about real quickly. One is, this country is Haiti. That is where Emmanuel lives. Lisa and I support a little girl. She's called Obvious in a country right there, Uganda. Have you heard? I presume most have heard of that country, okay? Probably statistically one of the poorest countries of the world. And we're going to be sharing that a little bit with you in just a little bit. Have you heard of the phrase, first world problems? You've heard of that phrase, first world problems. Now, I've got something I want to share with you in just a couple minutes. But I'm going to ask you, what would you think to be some of our problems that we would call first world problems? What problems do we tend to deal with? Slow Wi-Fi. Has anyone ever been anywhere? Maybe been to a hotel or somewhere where the Wi-Fi, either you had to pay for it, or it was slow and it frustrated you, okay? I'll put my hand up to that one, and I reckon Chad will as well, okay? What other first world problems do we have? Julie? Addictions, okay? Addictions. Now, those kind of problems are around the world, first, second, and third world. Okay, very good, okay? Any particularly first world problems? How many of us have gone to the fridge, opened up the fridge, and load of stuff in there, and maybe you've heard your child say what kind of words? There's nothing to eat. There's nothing to eat. Or you're on the television, and maybe you've got Netflix, maybe you have Amazon Prime, and you're there and you make the comment, there's nothing to watch. Nothing to. You remember back in the day, and I was in America at this time. I know you're here. You remember back in the day, and we've said this before, so we need to remember this. Remember back in the day when you didn't have this little thing with the buttons on it, you go click, click, click. You had to get up and walk over and do this, chunk, 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 on your television. Who remembers that? Yes. Okay, good. Everybody remember that? Who remembers in ours, there was a little dial in the back. You had to go like this to try and get the picture clear. You remember all that? Yeah, very good, very good. And we had 3 channels, and then we had a public channel. I can't remember what it's called. But NBC, ABC, and CBS. How many channels did we have here back in 1950 or whatever? Audrey, Eddie? 2, 3. Okay. The point is now we have more channels than we could ever envision. More opportunity. First world problems. So what do you think would be some of the third world problems? Give me some ideas what you would think could be a third. What? Food. Where am I going to get my next meal? What about water? Who said clean water? Someone said clean water. Neil said clean water. Power? Am I going to have electricity? Do I even have any electricity for my home?
Or a home.
Do I even have a home to not have electricity in and to not have water in? Education. We assume because we can send our children to school here for free that it's that way around the world. But I'll tell you right now, in Haiti, that's not the case. You have to pay. It's not a lot. But you have to pay for your child to go to school, and many of them cannot afford. In Uganda, I was talking with a lady who has gone to Uganda a few times. She lives in Ukraine, and she said Very often, the parents cannot afford for I think it's £7 a month to send their child to school, and so they can't afford it, so their children don't go to school. And certainly in a country like that, if you have no education, then what is your chance for a future? Pretty much zero. So here we go. I've got this little song. Now, when you hear this, you'll fully expect to hear Julie Andrews come shouting out of the screen and sing The Sound of Music or something like that. But it's a little song entitled First World Problems. Here we go. So now, the goal of today is not to make us feel guilty. Okay? That is not the point of today. The point is today to make us what? What's the word? Thankful. That's what we're after. So we're after about a bit of perspective. We're after about a bit of trying to understand all that God has provided for us. Okay, so Chris, could you get the lights, please? So we're going to read a passage in Luke chapter 17. If you have your Bibles there, you're welcome to follow along. We've got it up on the screen as well. So let me... Goodness, where is... Do I not? Okay. Let me first try to... I've got a little illustration up here, and it does say this. Okay, so I've got a little illustration up here. It looks confusing, and I agree, it does look confusing. Let me step aside just a little bit, try to explain it to you. Has anyone ever heard the term before, gross domestic product, GDP? Okay, has anyone ever heard that phrase before, that term? Okay, it's confusing. I tried to understand it a little bit, and I got a little bit of the way. But the point is, it basically talks about the wealth of a country and how well the people are doing and standard of living, that sort of thing. So I went on and I found a little website that listed many countries of the world and their sort of standard of living. Let's kind of walk through this just a little bit. They said the world average, you take the entire world, all the countries, they would say per person. We're talking about the wealth of the country per person, and they put it all in U.S. dollars. I don't know why, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. It gives you an idea. Per person in 2017 was right around $17,000 U.S. Okay, on the whole, the entire world we're talking about, the very rich nations and the poor nations, you put them all in one basket and average them. But if we take a look at the various countries, the wealthiest country, and I'm not sure, Qatar, this would be from oil and all that sort of thing, they would have $128,000 per person in 2017, okay? It is quite a small country, but I'm sure a lot of it is from oil that is sold. Move along to Ireland. This surprised me. Ireland had theirs was nearly $77,000 per person. Yeah. Then the UK, England, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, nearly 45,000, but a fair distance from Ireland. I found that interesting. But then, what was shocking to me, we come to the countries of Uganda, which is where Obvious lives, and it's down to below 2,000. Below 2,000. We go to Haiti, where Emmanuel lives, and it's even below Uganda. And then you go to the lowest country in the entire stack, Dominican Republic of Congo, not even 1,000, okay? So these are countries that would struggle incredibly with the basics of clean water, food, what am I going to eat the next day, regardless of what am I going to have for my Christmas dinner, and that's not even on their minds. What are we going to eat tomorrow or tonight? Okay, again, this is not to make us feel guilty. This is to make us thankful and to give us a bit of perspective. So let's come to this passage. In Luke chapter 17. We have it up here. If you don't have it in your Bible, let's read this together. Very well-known story. Starts in verse 11. Okay, it says this. Now it happened, as he went to Jerusalem, that he passed through the midst of Samaria and Galilee. Then as he entered a certain village, there met him 10 men who were lepers. Leprosy at the time was and still is a very, very terrible skin disease. Obviously, at the time that they didn't have the medications that we have today. And if you were a leper, if you had this skin disease back in that time, you were an outcast. You were not a part of the community. The law had very specific regulations on things that had to happen. You had to be put away from the community, given certain periods of time to see how the disease developed or didn't develop. And it was a very, very, very bad thing. Verse 12, there met him 10 men who were lepers, who stood afar off, as you would expect. And they lifted up their voices and said, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said to them, Go, show yourselves to the priests, which is what they would have to do. And so it was that as they went, they were cleansed. And one of them, when he saw that he was healed, returned with a loud voice, glorified God, and fell down on his face at his feet, giving him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. Where have you heard that word Samaritan before? The Good Samaritan. So Jesus answered and said, Where were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? Were there not any found who returned to give him glory to God except for this foreigner? And he said to him, Arise, go your way, your faith has made you well. Incredible story, incredible event. I just want to bring out a few little points on this before we talk about something else and try and bring this all to a close and wrap this all up. In that account in Luke chapter 17, there were 10 who were poorly, 10 who had this terrible disease of leprosy, and each of the 10 had the exact same problem. And how many of them, if you remember what we just got done reading, how many of them were crying out to Jesus? How many of them? All of them. All of them cried out to Jesus. And it's interesting. So I take that all 10 must have some degree of faith, some degree of trust, or they thought, well, it couldn't hurt, right? Nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. We've heard about stories. We've heard about things about this particular man. So I thought, nothing to lose, like Chris said. And then when Jesus said to them, Go and show yourself to the priest, I wonder what was going through their mind. I wonder what was going through their mind. I wonder if they were thinking, well, there again, there's nothing to lose. We'll just do what he says. I mean, there's nothing to do where we're at. We're outcast. There's nothing positive for us here. So they must have been desperate enough and trusted Jesus enough to do what he said to do. And the Bible says, as they did, how many of them were cleansed? How many of them were healed? All of them. They were all healed. They were all healed, which is a great thing. And Jesus has the ability to do that, and he has that power to do that. They were all cleansed, but what's important is what happens next. What happens next is there was only one who turned around and gave praise to God and thanks to Jesus for being healed. What was there about the other 9 that didn't even make him think about that? What was there about it? Was it that, oh, wow, this is fantastic, and we'll just go have a party, we'll have a great time? But only 1 out of the 10 were thankful. And I take that we as people can be so unthankful. We can presume and assume so much. Just like, and I've told you this story before, and I'll tell it again because I think it's so important, the story of the man who was in the restaurant one day, and as he was sat at this table, and the waitress came to him, and he was there looking at the menu, and she brought a glass of ice water. And she took his order and was going to go to the kitchen to give his order. And she turned around because she forgot to ask him a question. And she saw him bowing his head and praying over that glass of ice water. And she waited very patiently. And as she approached him after he was finished praying, she said, "Excuse me. I've seen people pray over their food." But she says, "I've never seen anybody pray over a glass of ice water." And she said, "Could I ask you why?" And he said, "Well, I'll tell you." He said, I served in the war, and there was a day when we were in the bunker. I couldn't go anywhere. It was hot. I literally felt like I was dying of thirst. And he said, I prayed. He said, I never have believed in God, but God, if you are up there, would you give me some relief from this thirst? And if you do, I will live and serve you for the rest of my life. He said within 5 minutes, the heavens opened up, there was a rain, and he was able to quench his thirst. And he says, forever and a day, anytime I have a glass of water that I can drink, I always stop and thank the God who provided that drink of water. Now, I'm not saying we should do that, but I am saying is a challenge to both yourself and to me, that how much are we thankful for these simple things? Are we thankful for a bed to sleep in? Are we thankful for the fact that most of the times when you walk over to your kitchen sink and you turn that little thing that we call a tap? By the way, who knows what you call it in America? Faucet. I don't know why, but faucet, okay? Turn the little thing, and also water comes out, that little hole. Isn't that fantastic? And not only that, you can drink it, and most of the times not get ill. Isn't that fantastic? Isn't it great that you can go to this? Most of us would have this big rectangular thing. You open the door, and inside it's cold, and you can put food in there and store it, and it'll stay good for a period of time. Unless you put stuff in there and it lasts, and you stick it in the back. You buy food and you get shoved to the back, and all of a sudden you discover it about a month later, right? And you come out and it's green and all different kinds of colors. Are we thankful for a roof over our heads? Are we thankful for the air that we have to breathe? Are we thankful for the people who sat around the tables, that we have a friend? Are we thankful, like Steve said, that we can gather on a morning to be able to worship God? Are we thankful? Jesus said, of these 10, there was only one that turned and offered thanks. Where are the other 9? And interestingly enough, the scripture points out that this was a Samaritan. This was somebody who was looked on from the Jewish population as an outcast, even more than a leper, someone who was not part of the community. But here was someone who turned around and gave thanks. So my prayer today, my hope today is that we will become a thankful people. But even more than that, and here's what happens. When we become a thankful people, we recognize where our things come from. If we become thankful, that means we have to recognize and know where the air comes from. We have to recognize where the sunshine comes from and where the water comes from. And all of a sudden, God will become far bigger. God's creation will become far more to us. And we'll recognize that even in our daily lives, the simple little things that we take for granted, that we assume, that we'll start thinking more about God. We'll be thinking more about where these things come from. And we won't moan and groan when things don't work like they should, because we'll get a bit of perspective. Now, yesterday, I discovered a problem with the car. Aren't cars wonderful? When they work. Thank you, Simon. That's the right word. They're wonderful when they work. But you know what? Truth be told, I just need to be thankful that we do have this thing that sits in the driveway, has 4 wheels on it, and a steering wheel and an engine that works most of the time. And you know what? So what if it breaks down every now and again? My goodness. Need to be thankful. Thankfulness. Now, I want to take you on a little journey, if we could. I want us to travel to the country where Emmanuel lives, that of Haiti. Now, I did have the opportunity and privilege to go to Jamaica one time for a week for a mission opportunity. Jamaica would be very similar to Haiti. If you were to look on the internet and Jamaica, most of the pictures you will see are these gorgeous beaches and this and that and the other, which is true. It's there. I sat on a beach when we first got there and watched the sunset. And it was one of the most amazing, beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life. It wasn't until we got in a car the next day and went up to the mountain that I realized the real Jamaica. And some of the things you'll see in this little video about Haiti was very much like I experienced in Jamaica. So as we view this, I want you to view this. And I want you to think to yourself, what is my reaction to this? How would I deal with these kinds of things? And we'll have just a moment for you to kind of feedback a little bit. I want to read you something from Obvious, and then we'll be finished for this part. We'll come to our AGM. But I want us to sort of get a bit of perspective, a bit of reflection now as we watch this. This video comes from someone who is actually a professional videographer. Is that a word? Videographer? Someone who actually does videos. He's a professional. He had taken a team to Haiti to do some kind of video, and his team got sick, and he thought he's a bit of an adventurous sort of chappy. He made friends with one of the Haitians, and his friend, this new friend invited him to go up to the mountain to visit his auntie or something who lives on top of the mountain, and he said yes. And so I'm skipping by the bit where he talks about his friends being ill, come right into the time where he's traveling up the mountain, and some of the things he sees and experiences in the country where Emmanuel lives. Here we go.
Asked if I wanted to join him on the journey up to the top of the mountain to meet his family. The answer was clearly a yes. 2 minutes later, we were on a bike after picking up some supplies and a present to give to his family in the nearest town. They warned me that the ride was very long and bumpy. I didn't care or realize to what extent they meant until we actually started the drive up the mountain. 2 hours later, we were falling off the bike, stalling in rivers, and subjecting certain body parts to some less than desirable situations. But the ride was absolutely beautiful, and I felt pretty awesome being there where not a lot of people get to see. But what an incredible honor to see and experience this. Not an hour later, the steep road became too much for the bikes to continue on, so we parted ways and kept trekking forward on foot. The road eventually turned into a path, which then turned into a steep cliff, and the sun began to set for the night.
Merci beaucoup, oui.
This is beans. All this is beans.
Beans?
Mm-hmm. See? I want to give you this as a gift.
Really?
This cone.
Really? Wadley, thank you.
Keep it. Thank you, man.
Sometimes I feel that you just listen. You listen and see things. Things that you know will only happen once. And you take a step back and watch. You watch and listen knowing you will always have this special moment. But it's in the moment right now. When the day comes to an end, don't let there be any excuses or regrets for anything. Just live in that moment. Because this only happens once.
Last time I came here.
Ça va bien, merci. Ça va aussi. Oui, ça va.
This one? Are you good for that one?
Non, non. Whoa. Okay.
This is for you, man.
This is for me?
Yeah.
Merci beaucoup, merci.
But the chocolate, it's an extra.
And we're having chocolate for breakfast? We're having chocolate for breakfast.
Yeah, man. You see, that's the cacao. They put in dry.
I quickly learned that everything we ate came directly from their land.
Smell good.
Really good.
After a morning of being taught the ways of Wadley's family, we hiked for 20 minutes for a bath in the refreshing mountain water. I really couldn't find a way to explain to them just how much I appreciated them bringing me into their world for a day to see the true side of life in the Haitian mountains. Just as fast as it happened, my time with Wadley's exceptionally loving and welcoming family came to an end. They shared with me a day in their life, which for me was one of the best days I've lived. We brought with us the day before a gift. We brought them a simple radio to have a way to warn them about earthquakes in the area. I have never seen the love that they showed us for a gift before. What costs $1 for me changed their lives. They've also never had recorded music to listen to either. So the first thing they did was have a dance party. They danced and played that static-filled station for hours and well into the morning. I was sad to leave so soon, but I got a glimpse into the lives of a few people who lead a very different life than I do. And I took away some simple yet important lessons for my future. It reaffirmed me to be open to experiences that may push my comfort zone a bit. By doing this, a whole other world of knowledge, excitement, and experiences opens up to...
Okay. Perspective. Tell me, how do you react to that? Tell me what thoughts went through your mind. Chris.
Everything they did, they got from the land.
Everything they did, they got from the land. Chris, could you get his lights, please? What else? What else?
They sort of gave their all.
Isn't it amazing? They have nothing, but did you notice the hospitality? The hospitality they had, although they had nothing. They welcomed this young lad in, provided help, shared with him, although they had just so incredibly little. Isn't that amazing? Okay, what else? What else? What do you think about the transportation system in the roads? Who's going to moan about a pothole? Anyone going to moan about a pothole on the roads anymore? Don't moan about pothole, because those roads are real. When we went up the mountain in Jamaica, that's exactly what it was like. Well, maybe not quite that bad, but it was very, very, very similar. Very similar. Okay. Any other perspectives? Any other thoughts?
The light.
The light. Lack of, had a little lamp. No Wi-Fi, no electricity. Okay. What would we do? What would we?
Shocked that they didn't even have a rubbish little radio.
Yeah, a radio. They were blown away by a little radio. I presume it'll have to be one of the wind-up ones, because where would you buy batteries from? Absolutely. The first time they would have heard a radio. I mean, it's hard to imagine. Okay. Anything else?
They were happy though.
They were happy. Did you see the smiles? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let me do this, and then we're going to be finished with this part. Lisa, how much did you send Obvious last year? Was it 40 quid or 50 quid or something? Okay, so we try to send our sponsored child in Uganda, 25 pounds for her birthday and 25 pounds for Christmas, and I can't remember why, but we kind of missed out. And so Lisa sent her 50 pounds around Christmas time. Was it Christmas time or her birthday?
It was a birthday.
It was a birthday, okay. And we got this letter back. By the way, if you sponsor a child, you should be getting letters back and forth, and please respond back. It's amazing. When Lisa showed me this, couldn't believe it. So someone gives you 50 pounds for a birthday present. What do you do with it? Tell me, what do you do with it? What do you buy? 50 quid. What could you get for 50 quid now? What? Bit of clothes? What would you buy? What? Trainers? Shoes? Perfume? What? Books? Yeah. Okay. Anything else? What would you buy? Anybody else? Okay. Yes, Aaron.
Bible.
You buy a Bible. Good for you, lad. Good for you. I'll tell you what Obvious bought. Let me tell you what Obvious bought. Okay, I'll try and read this best I can. Say, hello, my friend. My family and I'll try to read you exactly as she writes it. Hello, my friend. My family and I are okay. O-K-E-Y. I guess we still spell it like that. Thank you for the gift. It equals, now their money is very different. It's about 5,000 of their shillings or something to 1 pound. They got about 198,500 Ugandan shillings. It sounds like a lot, doesn't it? It's not. Okay, used as follows. They bought a goat for 150,000. She bought 10 kilograms of posho, which I looked this up. It's some kind of grain that you make in like a meal kind of thing. That was 16,000. She bought a dress, 20,000. 1 kilogram of nuts. So she's my kind of girl. 1 kilogram of sugar, 4,000, and some bread for 2,500. And she says, God bless you. Not a toy in there. Nothing for herself other than a dress. I was just utterly amazed that everything she got was for her family. She got a goat. That was good thinking, because a goat will last you beyond a month, right? Yeah. Now, again, this is not about making us feel guilty. This is about a bit of perspective, about a bit of thankfulness.